This is Brad A. Milford with the Unlimited Business Wisdom Podcast, where leaders, seasoned entrepreneurs, and business owners share their wisdom. It's straight to the point to respect people's time, and because we know knowledge and wisdom turn to business possibility, and possibility mixed with support and action become reality. In this podcast, we discuss leadership, sales, marketing, operations, team development, quality, and finance to drive sustainable results and everlasting impact to make the world a better place. Thanks for joining us. Hey, Barry, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here with you, Brad.
I'm really glad you're here. So I've looked over your website. I've done my due diligence. I see some fascinating things. And then there's even some more. So I was really enjoying our conversation that we just had prior to this. And I am ready to dive in with you. I'm excited that you're here. In a few sentences, Barry, can you share with the audience, people watching and listening, a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. I started out in law school because I had a big mouth and didn't know what to do. And people said, how about lawyer? I did not finish. It was not a good fit. I went across from the University of San Diego School of Law to the undergraduate library, down into the basement where they had all the journals from every industry you've ever heard of, looking at everything. What do I want to be? I was kind of stalling because I had to tell my mother I was leaving law school and I knew it would break her heart. And yeah, for years she was, still pitching law school and, matchbook, hey, you could do law at night. And, but I came across the Journal of Financial Planning and I went, the law thing kind of appealed to me because of clients, but it didn't appeal to me because of the negativity of, I didn't want to do criminal, and civil seemed very, and I was like, well, it's clients, but positive, helping people achieve goals and stay out of trouble. And so unlike a lot of people in my industry who sort of fell into it after other careers, I intentionally chose it. And I've been doing it for 35 years. I've held the certified financial planner designation for 28 of those years. So it's very much a profession to me, a calling. I believe in it passionately. I've certainly formed a lot of strong opinions about what's, sort of right and wrong. And I often share with people that I'm a contrarian to a lot of the conventional wisdom that people think is gospel and really isn't. And if you want to get into that, we can talk about that. But I don't do it to be ornery or disagreeable or anything like that. I do it because I think it's harmful. And I feel like it's my job to be an advocate for my clients.
Well, I love that. I love the advocate thing. And I love the story about the lawyer. I really truly relate to that too. So I understand how difficult that was because that's what I heard growing up all the time too. And
right,
like, you should be a lawyer, you should be a lawyer, you should be a lawyer. They kind of drilled into our heads at some point, right? And
right.
Good for you for
toughest phone call ever.
I bet, but good for you for taking the plunge. And now having been in the industry for 35 years, that's fantastic. I celebrate you for that as well, the longevity and the loyalty that's required for that in today's day. That's quite rare. So I love the contrarian thing. And I'm very eager. So stick with us, everybody listening and watching, because we're going to dive into those a little bit here in just a moment or two. Barry, what's the best thing about being a business?
I think control. I have gone back and forth over the course of my career where I've done kind of the corporate job, been the employee person, and then been the independent business person. And my wife's a fantastic employee. She's hardworking, she's loyal, she's dedicated. She's a great corporate employee. She works for a major Fortune 500 company. I'm a terrible employee, not because I don't do my job really well, and I really put a lot into it. It's because I just need to be able to do my own thing, my own way, without asking anybody's permission, without feeling like I'm stepping on the corporate ego or, painting outside the lines. And so I just love the independence, the flexibility, the choice to do things my way, my style, and compliant with any rules or regulations that apply to me. Of course, I'm not out there being a crazy rebel, not going to get myself in trouble, but I want to be able to put out my own voice, my own way, based on opinions and beliefs that I've formed over time. And, I get to choose to market. I get to choose to, especially how I speak to my clients and how I serve them. I just need that ability to do that in my own unique way. And I think that's what probably is very attractive to a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners is It's risky. It's scary to be kind of on your own without the big mothership and responsible for everything. But what comes with that, I think, are some great rewards. And I own 2 boats, and I don't have to ask anybody's permission when I use them. So I think that's the other part.
I love the ending there. That was great. But any entrepreneur listening, watching right now is probably they got the victory sign and go, yeah, that's me. Yes, yes,
Right.
yes. Totally relate
Right.
to everything you just shared. I mean, you said that very eloquently too. It's about freedom. It's about control. It's about us being able to express our voices in a particular way and not have to work on somebody else's timeline. Well said. And yes, I too like want to jump out of my chair right now and go, yes, that's me.
It's like, you go, girl. Whatever the guy version of it.
Exactly. No, that's great. Thank you so much. This is my favorite question. I love asking this of, what just a wide range of different businesses and different people. And it's funny because it seems to be always true. So even when I started this years ago, we hear from other businesses, and it is so true. When people first listen to the podcast, they're like, what? But we hear from other businesses they're getting so much business. People who are truly dedicated and they dive in and they've been doing it for a while, like they get so much business that sometimes the chaos causes some overwhelm, some feelings of overwhelm. Would you be willing to share your thoughts on that, Barry?
It is very easy to get overwhelmed, especially when you are dedicated to providing a quality result and experience, right? Because a
Mm,
quality experience is purposeful, it's intentional, it's not quick, it's not usually one and done. It usually has a process associated with it. And I really believe that I would say just about every business, if you ask them, I love referrals. Well,
mm,
I would say that I love introductions. See, to me, a referral is a name and a number. And honestly, nobody wants to be called out of the blue.
mm.
Hey, so and so gave me your name and number. Really gonna have to go talk to so and so. But if that person says to the other person, hey, I'm working with someone and the experience was so positive, it was so beneficial that I really thought this could be something you could benefit from. Well, that's I think really what a business wants. And in order to get that, I'm always very conscious about what is the experience for the person, not just in terms of the outcome of the work we're doing together, but how are they feeling about it and themselves and me along the way, such that they want to tell other people about it. And I've never believed that a referral or an introduction is my reward. I see so many people say, well, the best compliment you can give my business is a referral, or I get compensated in several ways. One of them is your referrals. I think that's just so cheesy and high pressure. To me, especially in the work I do, because my work, I think, impacts people's lives in a very significant, often multi-decade, multi-generational way.
Mhm.
To me, I'm giving my client the ability to give their friend, family, colleague, people they know and love and care about, a gift, and that's the gift of financial security. And I'm just a conduit of that. Does my business benefit from that? Of course. But I want my client to see that they're having an impact on the people they care about, because that's all they care about. They don't really care about me, and that's okay. I accept that. I provide a service. But there's very few things that you can do for someone else that would have as much benefit as making sure they're in a position to avoid financial loss and achieve financial success. That's a pretty big gift. And so that's kind of how I position it. It's not about me, it's about them. And
I
to
love that.
kind of close the loop on your overwhelm, I therefore think that one of the best ways to run your business is to serve your ideal client, so that you're then introduced to your ideal client, and then you're working with people that don't overwhelm you because they respect you, they appreciate you, they're reasonable in their time expectations. And it's not like I'm trying to help everybody. I'd rather just help the clients of my client, the friends of my clients, and have them become clients, and keep that kind of narrow.
That's great. I love a lot of what you just shared. A couple of things really stood out to me. The distinction between intro and referral. I'm really glad you brought that up because I think the term referral is thrown around a lot, but the way you described is very different. And so that's something very important to me. And I think it would be to any listener, if you're really paying attention right now, it's not about referrals. The name and number thing, I don't ever do that. And I really never thought about it, to be honest. But in today's day, but I do a lot of introductions. There's a great thing about having a podcast, right? And be able to do this kind of thing here. But I don't send, and I tell people I don't send, unvetted referrals. So they got to be vetted to a certain extent. And anybody that gets a name and number from somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody, that's not worth very much, is it? It's some hard work for people. There's not a whole lot of value in there. So I'm glad you made that distinction. Those have been in business for a while, seasoned like yourself. We know those. But if you're newer in business, be careful about how you're tossing that around, because your name is attached to those referrals. So good points. And
can I just give you a little example that I think might bring the point home?
Please, I love an illustration.
So I have a client who's the owner of a very, very successful services company in the HVAC, heating, ventilation, air conditioning space. Very successful. His CFO is a very sharp cookie, very sharp. And they run a great business. And there are some things going on in their business that basically, because of my work with him, she reached out and said, can you help me with X, Y, and Z? And she's so appreciative and respectful and courteous and compliant and does what, her side of the homework equation. And I actually never asked him for that, or, but I think when you're talking about big financial actions, big financial decisions, and you're asking someone else to come into that world that, money is very private for people, I think there just has to be a really high level of trust. And I don't think you can force create trust. I think it's people are always watching you, how you act, how you perform, how you function. I can't help myself when I observe other businesses, look at their process. And my wife is always like, could you please stop and shut up talking about this? But there are businesses that are so poorly executed in their process and their client experience or their customer experience. And I think we know a few of those probably in our own lives. And yet the hurdle is so low that if you just take one step up and you'd step over the bar, you'd blow people away. I'll give you a great example. I had two very different service experiences in my home. Just unlucky me, I had a new air conditioning system put in. I had a new water heater system put in. The water heater guy arrives grumpy, surly, doesn't introduce himself. My water heater's in a place where he has to pass over some really nice carpet in the house. And I made could you please protect it? Sure enough, he barely did anything and got rusty water on the carpet. And it was a big to-do. And I asked him some questions about functionality because we added some new features to it, and it couldn't be bothered. The other guy shows up, got the booties on, hands me his business card, introduces, he's friendly, he's nice, he answers my questions with enthusiasm, explains everything in an enthusiastic way. I actually asked him, hey, is there a way I can give you like a Google review or something? I've just had such a positive experience. Well, I've rarely done that, but I felt like I have to really compliment this person's actions. And I did do that. And so I think it's not just about providing the service. It's not about, I could make food at home, right? I go to a restaurant to have the experience. So I don't feel obligated to do some big tip just because you brought me a meal. It's the experience that I have because I'm at the restaurant. And how interesting or dynamic is that waiter or waitress? I think they can control their tip by how they interact rather than just taking a food order and slapping it down on your table. So probably a little bit more detail than you needed, but I think people listening, I'm so conscious of the experience people have. And if I see any part of my process that either I control or I have other entities involved in, attorneys or CPAs or other things, I talk to them about the experience my client's going to have interacting with you guys and what's that going to be about, so that I know my client's going to have a positive experience all the way through.
I love it. I literally, you took the other two things that jumped out from your statement before. There were three things: the distinction between intro and referral, actually doing intro, and then I wrote down experience and service. And you just illustrated those very well. But that is exactly what jumped out at me, because that is what business is all about. And I love what you said about, sometimes it's just the simple little things, and great illustrations, Barry. I really appreciate that. There's literally allow people to be able to visualize what we're talking about here, which is really powerful. So thank you. Appreciate that. Let's dive into these other couple questions, and we're going to dive into some deep stuff here.
Okay.
So, question number 4, really important. What other successful business owners, like yourself, of course, Barry, ought to be on the Unlimited Wisdom podcast?
There's a gentleman that I have followed for quite some time. His name's David Newman. He, I think, started out as he's coached speakers and consultants and solopreneurs, and I love him. I'm originally from New York. A little my accent probably slips in there once in a while. He's from Philadelphia. We're very kindred spirits. We're kind of direct speakers, direct talkers, bottom line kind of people. Don't allow not too much smoke and mirrors and BS and things like that. And I have watched his career evolve, and I've watched him take some really amazing moves in how he operates his own business and his marketing and his refinement of his message and messaging and collateral materials. And as he's gotten more successful, he's invested in more things and tools and people. And I think he provides a lot of value because I think he cuts through a lot of the noise in that space. So I think that might be a good person to talk to.
I love it. Do you believe in threes? That's the 3rd time I've heard that person's name now.
Oh, wow.
So I'm
Great.
going to make it a point to reach out to
I'd be
David.
happy to make the introduction.
Nice. That's great. I love it. This is great. This is wonderful. All right, let's get to the crux of this, right? So you specialize in, well, you have a lot of seasoned business, but you specialize in a thing. And I literally have looked at your website and checked out and done a little bit of due diligence, and I really like what I see. What's the one piece of advice that you would share with other business owners? I realize that may be challenging, but what's something really important that you think other entrepreneurs need to know?
In both sides of the business, both working with, individuals, families, and business owners who are really just individuals and families who earn their money a little bit different than the W-2 paycheck person, right? It's just a different way your business is structured. I think there are really two very fundamental, very core aspects to being financially successful. It's number one, and again, it applies to individuals and businesses. I think number one, avoid financial loss. Prevent the preventable. And this can be as simple as you'll see so much TV advertising around, save money on your auto insurance. That's not the objective. The objective of auto insurance is to keep your assets from being sucked away in a lawsuit because you caused a multi-car, multi-injury accident and you were sued for $2 million. So your cheapo, I won't mention names, 800 number, cartoon character, auto insurance for minimum numbers, minimum limits to keep your premiums lower by a few dollars ends up potentially exposing you to lifelong financial devastation as 25% of your wages gets garnished for the rest of your life to satisfy a multi-million-dollar judgment. You take that over to the business owner side. Many business owners do not have business overhead expense insurance. And so they can't make rent, they can't make payroll, they can't deal with, vendor obligations for a short-term hiccup in their business. And they end up going bankrupt overnight because they don't have an emergency fund associated with the business. They don't have business overhead expense insurance, things like that, liability insurance of a sufficient nature. So preventing the preventable, clearly identifiable losses where we could suffer big multi-decade backsteps in wealth and assets and future wages and income. The other side of it is when it comes to achieving financial success, I think it's about being very clear on the goals and having a plan, implementing the plan, sticking to the plan, and not necessarily following conventional wisdom. And I see this over and over and over again with things that are just treated as gospel when they're absolutely not. I see it in now where people are suffering needless losses in their investment accounts, their retirement accounts. I see it people who are having their retirements wiped out needlessly. So for example, the tools that you would use in a retirement accumulation strategy, completely different than what you would do in a retirement income distribution strategy.
Sure.
On the business owner side, again, kind of the preventing the preventable and also creating intentional outcomes. big, huge blind spot, big, huge missing piece for a lot of, entrepreneurs and business owners who are busy running their business is they don't have what's called a buy-sell agreement. And a buy-sell agreement is what allows your business to be bought and sold with a predetermined formula, with a predetermined valuation, a business valuation method. And whether this is the succession planning where you want to go to and stay within your family, to your children, for example, or you want a valued partner or key employee, or even a respected competitor. If I'm a dentist and I have a practice and I want my patients to go to Dr. Joe, if I'm not able to continue my practice, I might want to give him a first right of refusal to buy my practice. If you don't have these things in place, if let's say you're in a partnership and one of the partners dies, now you're in business with the partner's spouse and they're not qualified to run the business, or the spouse is like, hey, I need the economic value of that business. Let's sell it. And now your business is gone because, she or he need that sale. And so, there's things that can happen to business owners: death, illness, injury, bankruptcy, divorce. I want to get out or I have to get out, right? I'm done, or I'm done with you, right? Like I don't want to work or I don't want to work with you. But these all can be built into an agreement. And what will happen so that you don't have disputes with spouses, you don't have conflicts with families, you don't have conflicts within families or conflicts amongst partners. And this all can be spelled out. There's all kinds of cool stuff you can do within that space to create the funding. So we call it a funded buy-sell agreement. So there's resources available to facilitate these transactions. I would say that would be the number one blind spot for most businesses. And the corollary to it is being just way too vague about having this asset that for many it is their core asset, is the bulk of their net worth. And the extent of the planning is, yeah, someday I might transfer it to my kid, or someday I might sell it. And like, that's it. That's the extent of the planning. And they haven't, for example, established, well, within my space, within my field, there's a multiple, right? I would sell my business for a multiple of, say, my cash flow or earnings. Well, there's a range within that, right? Are you at the low end of the range or the high end of the range? And I know, Brad, you'll appreciate this. A big determinant of that: systems, processes, customer lists, service contracts, renewable income, goodwill, right? Identifiable, tangible things. But I just work with a business owner who's actually able to sell his business for like 15 times earnings because they have a spectacular set of processes. Somebody else might only be able to do 6. And so what we want to do is run the business, even if you're decades from selling, run the business as if you were going to sell it tomorrow. And keep getting better and better at that to drive your EBITDA, your earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation. Make sure that you're running the business as if you were going to sell it, so that someday, if you want to or have to, you can get maximum value for it, for yourself, for your retirement, or for your family. You asked me to pick one. That's the one.
You delivered so much in a short amount of time. I'm really impressed. Honestly, I am. And I knew that I know you have a lot of knowledge and everything, but the way you delivered that is fantastic. I mean, you talk about succession planning and buy-sell agreements, and you said that you would deliver probably some blind spots, right? And you nailed a bunch of them. That business owner, a lot of business owners, I mean, let's face it, let's be real. A lot of business owners don't have a clear-cut plan in business in general, let alone succession planning, their plan for how they want to sell or how they're going to move to sell. I mean, I'm just a straight speaker, so that's not a sweet spot there's a lot of visionaries who are CEOs, and I mean, there's lots of them. And for every visionary CEO, there's only, 100 visionary CEO, there's only 4 integrators. So, not everybody thinks that way. And I respect that. And a lot of times the visionaries are the ones who were, the founders of the business, right? So that's just not their natural spot to think through these
things. And we wouldn't
like
expect them to, right? We they're great at what they do.
Exactly.
You could be a fantastic surgeon and a terrible auto mechanic, right? I mean, you can't be good at everything.
Yep. And so I love that you pointed some of those out. I mean, I wrote down just-in-time capital. So insurance, making sure you have insurance for that business overhead. being able to raise capital just in time. But what I really love about the intentional outcomes. So when somebody connects with someone like you that has the experience that you do, then you can begin to plan those kinds of things, begin to pull out some of those blind spots and say, have you ever thought about this? Have you ever thought about that? And yet I know from doing this for a while that so many people are afraid to just hop on a phone call and have a conversation about these kinds of things, just an
Right.
initial conversation. So
Because it's not urgent. It's very important, but it's not urgent. The brush fire of the day, the delivery that didn't arrive, or the customer that's mad about it, that's the urgent brush fire. And so all this stuff gets back burnered. I'll just share one other thing, just because it's sort of a passion of mine. There's a very famous statistic in business succession planning that most businesses don't even survive the transfer from one generation to the next. Very few make it to two, and almost none make it to three, which is a horrific statistic given the entrepreneurial drive and blood and sweat and tears put into building that business, and yet not having the mechanisms to move it on. And the reality is a lot of people would like to give or transfer or have their son or daughter take over the business, and yet don't do any grooming of them in just the business fundamentals, and don't put in the mechanisms to transfer it in a tax efficient way, because the IRS is kind of always sitting out there waiting to pounce. And there are ways to transfer ownership, minority ownership, at a discounted amount to pay the least amount of taxes, because it's a minority controlling interest. But there's also a way to make sure that, like, what is your intent? Is your intent to just go, here, it's yours, good luck? Is it, hey, Junior's going to run the business and I'm going to take a payment from that and earn out over time? Well, what if Junior's a really bad business person or messes something up? Is your income now shot? Is it, hey, I'm going to actually transfer ownership and just take a dividend payment from him or her? What if it's unequal? What if Sally has the business acumen, daughter Sally, and son Steve is like, not so much? How do we equalize that, right? We call that estate equalization. There's mechanisms to equalize that, because, if Sally's taking over this enterprise of tremendous economic value and dad doesn't want to disinherit son, we have mechanisms to do that. And so what we're really trying to do is say, look, we want this business transfer to be intentional and staged at the appropriate pace. So maybe they start on, in the mailroom or the shop floor, and work their way up. How are you grooming them in all the various positions to really understand the business? And yet, as a successor, a friend of mine, actually, I was interviewed on his podcast, Jonathan Goldhill. He wrote a book called The Disruptive Successor. It's a fantastic book that really dives into what I'm talking about, and how a successor actually can bring a positive spin on it, right? New perspective, more modern, more technology, open to new ideas, not so stuck in the way I've always been doing this since 1956. And so, and maybe bringing that adult child in just breathes some fresh life into the business now, and gives them a chance to decide if they really like enjoying running the business, right? And if that new successor, that future successor, enhances the economic value of the business, that's good for dad and that's good for Junior, right? Because eventually he'll inherit a more valuable business. And so I love this part of the business. I love this part of the planning field. It's essentially called succession planning and exit planning and such, but I think it even takes a step back earlier into like kind of this integration of the next generation. And are we doing this intentionally? So your grandchildren might be running the gigantic enterprise that you started in a storefront, 40 years ago. So I think, again, I'm just more trying to get your listeners to maybe have their creative thinking juices start to spin rather than just, I'm not really spewing advice here.
Yeah, I love it. No, I love that train of thought. I've actually had multiple conversations recently about how businesses, when they're transferred from father to son, how most of those hit demise very quickly. I've seen it so often. I imagine you have too, but you can help prevent that kind of thing.
So again, it goes back to that prevent the preventable. All of these situations are foreseeable, identifiable, and addressable. None of these are where you just kind of have to take it and deal with it.
I love that. That was a great line, very powerful line there. Prevent the preventable. So, Barry, I appreciate that. I know that you and I can talk business. We could be here for hours and hours and hours. I just know it. I feel it. I can tell. I mean, I can tell how passionate you are about what you do. And I celebrate you for that. And I know you took a chunk out of your day, to be here and to be able to serve people. Before we switch, I just want to switch from business just for a minute. Just I ask every guest, but because I believe that we do work to live and not live to work. And so I'd love to know, with all your vast experience and experiences, what's the most fun vacation you've ever had?
If you're listening to this, you don't see the fact that I'm the background I have is a tropical beach with breezes blowing the palm tree and waves coming into the shore. I'm a water guy.
Looks like Aruba.
Yeah, I have 2 different boats. I really like to be on the water. I've had a lot of the great tropical vacations, like the British Virgin Islands and St. Thomas and Jamaica, all those kinds of places. But the place that dropped my jaw, just couldn't even believe it, was we got to go on a Mediterranean cruise, and before the cruise was Rome, which was crazy. Taxi drivers in Rome are insane. The lines are irrelevant. They don't care. But after it, when we got off the cruise, we took a train to Lake Como. And I think people know Lake Como because of George Clooney. He's got a pretty fancy spread there in Lake Como in Italy. And I remember when I booked the trip, I booked it at location A, and then there was location B. And I'm standing there. Location A was a former monastery, and the rooms were up the hill, like a little train call you up. And I'm standing there waiting to check in. I kind of had my bags in my hand, and person in front of me is taking a while. So I just kind of set the bags down, and I turn around, and the lake is just all spread out in front of me, because it's just, you're high up, and it's just this sparkling jewel. And like I said, I've been on a lot of water, a lot of lakes. Nice. But it was so incredibly beautiful that I literally called the next place and canceled. So I don't need to leave. I'm good. And we spent the next week on their various ferry systems, going to all these old castles, and there was just so much history there. And it was just so amazing to be in a place that I never, I didn't grow up. My family had no money at all. I never went anywhere, never traveled anywhere. And I just remember just feeling so fortunate to be in just this spectacular setting and experiencing this. And the funniest moment from that trip, I'll just wrap it up with this, is the first time we walked up to the ferry fare booth, where they do tickets. And the woman said that you can have like one fare to one location is on the lake, or like an everywhere all day pass. And before I could even speak, my wife said, "He'll take the all day pass." I mean, she knew what the answer was going to be. And just that old world charm. And it was just a really special place. If you ever get a chance to go there, I would really recommend it.
I love it. You're taking me back to my days in Sicily and Italy. And so great.
Italy was amazing.
Yeah. I love how you delivered that too. So now it's got to go on my bucket list, Barry. Thanks.
Sure. Yeah. Say hi to George if you're over there.
Will do. Again, I want to thank you. This has been great. You delivered a lot of value. I can tell how much you care about your clients and what you do for them. I mean, that just emanated from you. So I appreciate you. I celebrate you for that.
Thank you.
When somebody watches this, they listen to it and they're like, yeah, I can tell Barry knows his stuff. And, he struck me. I know I need some of that stuff, and they want to reach out to you. What's the best way for them to reach out to you, Barry?
Sure. The name of my company is WealthDefense Financial Advisors. I think that probably came through, that I'm kind of the defender, kind of put a moat around your money in the castle and all that kind of stuff. So WealthDefenseGroup.com. There's a little form on there with about, 10 or 12 areas of planning. One of them includes business planning and business succession planning. If you want to dig into that topic a little more without, me bugging you at all, if you go to wealthdefensegroup.com /Bobs, like the guy's name with an S, That's business owner blind spots. I'm very sophisticated. So
Nice.
wealthdefensegroup.com/Bobs. You can kind of take a self-assessment, and there's a box under each question where you can kind of write comments and thoughts and stuff. And I'll get that. And then if you indicate that you want to follow up, we can certainly have a conversation, and it just starts with a conversation and we see where it goes. And if I'm your cup of tea, great. And if I'm not, I'll try and point you to somebody else who is. And as long as I can have an impact on people's lives, I'm happy.
I love that. I love that. And you've represented that throughout the whole entire podcast. So again, thank you very much. I encourage people, we'll have the link down below, fill out the information and reach out and have a conversation. Don't be scared. That's really what moves things forward.
I'm not
I
scared.
encourage you, when you watch and you listen, go ahead and reach out to Barry and let him know you just want to have a conversation. Barry, thank you much for being on. I appreciate you. I celebrate you and your investment of time today. So thank you.
My pleasure, Brad. I appreciate your enthusiasm about what I talked about. I really enjoyed the time.
This is Brad A. Milford with the Unlimited Business Wisdom Podcast, where leaders, seasoned entrepreneurs, and business owners share their wisdom. If you're looking for more on leadership, sales, marketing, or operations to drive team development, higher quality, and high-level sustainable profits, we encourage you to join the Built for Brilliance community on Facebook or reach out to us about one of our mastermind groups, coaching or consulting, or even fractional COO services. You can reach us at buildbrilliance.net/contact. We thank you for listening, for sharing the show, and appreciate your rating and reviews, as this makes more shows possible. Thanks for joining us.